as part of their trenches or fortifications, or just kind of spread it out. So they didn't know they were digging. And they began to prepare. This might go. And they even set up kind of an elaborate, where's my mouse? Sorry. An elaborate pumping system to pump air into it, because they couldn't do shafts like they did behind the line because the Confederates would see it. And they're looking out for tunnels. Had to be 50 feet under the Confederate lines. And when they got them, it was 150 feet of trenches. They're under the Confederate lines. Then they dug 75 feet in each direction, kind of like a T. And then they rolled over almost 400 barrels. Where's my mouse? 400 barrels of gunpowder, over 7,000 pounds, and filled all those with a long fuse back to the beginning of the tunnel. The plan was, let me get to what happened. This is the plan. They got a fresh division of troops, almost 5,000 men. These were black soldiers. The first black soldiers that would be used on a wide scale in the Army of the Potomac. They were determined, they were anxious to fight, so it was a good choice. The commander was a guy named Ferraro, and Ferraro was an abolitionist, a member of the temperance movement, a very prominent politician in New York. And Ferraro was told, very few people knew about this mine, they kept it as secret as possible. They would sneak out the night before, lay down right in front of the trenches, so they couldn't be seen. At sunup, every sunup, or just before sunup, Union guns would shell the Confederates. And then they would quit. And kind of a live and let live thing, they would allow the Confederates to cook breakfast. They wouldn't shell them. So when would they blow it up? During breakfast. During breakfast. You wouldn't be expecting it. And then they would attack and be just a few feet away. That was the plan. What they assumed it would be was, when they lit the fuse and it exploded, it would be kind of a muffled explosion. Because it's 50 feet down. They figured it would just be an explosion, and then the shock would knock out the Confederate soldiers. Maybe a little collapse of the line, that's it. And they would charge right in that opening while the Confederates were stunned. Good plan. The night before, Meade changed his mind. Meade replaced Ferraro's fresh, very motivated troops with troops that have been fighting since the beginning of the campaign under a general by the name of Leadley. And they told General Leadley, your men are going to attack the Confederate works at dawn. They didn't tell him about the mine. That's what they called the gunpowder. You're just going to attack. Leadley's men, white troops, have been fighting since the wilderness. They had taken horrific casualties. They were at Cold Harbor. And all they were told is, you're going to attack the Confederate lines. They're assuming we're going to be slaughtered. Now, a lot of people thought Meade took out the troops because he thought black troops couldn't do it. It was a racist move. Actually, it's tortured logic. But what Meade did was this. Meade thought, well, this sounds weird looking back, but there were a lot of people who believed that one of the reasons the United States began to recruit black soldiers was to kill them. They would die in battle, so they wouldn't have to worry about having free blacks, so the U.S. could be this white republic. This is tortured logic. It doesn't make sense, but Meade was worried people would accuse him of that if it was a slaughter. So he pulled them out. And so these men crawl out early the morning, and so it's still black, of July 17, 1864. They crawl out into no man's land. They lay down, just expecting to attack. They don't know about the mine. Leadley isn't with them. Leadley is furious. He can't take it anymore. He is actually in what they call a shelter, a bomb-proof, underground, drinking as much whiskey as he can humanly put in his body. He is stone drunk by dawn, completely drunk, out of it. And so they don't have a commander. And so the first morning shelling went, shelling quit. Both sides came out to cook breakfast. Almost no one knows it's going to happen. They have a long fuse. They light the fuse, and there's a little sandbag thing, and the men who dug it kind of hide behind that sandbag at the end of the tunnel, behind the Union lines. Now you know what's going to happen, don't you? What's going to happen? It's like one of those movies. Fuse goes and then does what? It stops halfway. Of course, right? It stopped. So they had to get what? A very fast and short volunteers. Because the tunnel is only 4.5 feet high. And there's always somebody, right? I'll do it! And he lit it and down the tunnel. Running full speed down the tunnel. The fuse is going. Now remember what they expect. A muffled explosion, right? He's just getting to the mouth of the tunnel. Just coming out. And it went off. It wasn't at all a muffled explosion. It was a massive boom! The entire Confederate line blows up. Things go for miles. There are pieces of the trench, there are bodies, there are equipment, there are horses just flying for miles. Nobody expected this. A big jet of flame went down the tunnel. And the guy is just coming out, and the flame hit him, boom, he just went sailing 100 feet over the trench. Supposedly, he got up and was fine. He just kind of skidded along, and yeah, I wonder if he was on fire. Nobody expected this. Well, right at the Union line, or right at the second trench line, they had a couple trench lines. A Confederate squad was behind in a trench having their breakfast cooked. As a slave. Cooking the breakfast is around a fire, they're sitting around, and boom, they go up. Everything goes up. Almost a mile away behind the Union lines, they're not even in the trenches, they're that far back. Some Union soldiers off the front are sitting around the fire near their tents. Same thing, cooking breakfast. The explosion goes off. They have no idea. So it's like, God, stuff's falling on them, all this stuff. All of a sudden, something big starts coming. They see it coming. And it's the slave. And suppose their story is he lands right in the middle of them. Ah, looks at him. He's like, whoa! On his feet. They swear on his feet. And they took him into a tent and they would charge a dime to see the flying man. But after that, here's Lee's men. They just kind of stand up. You know, they're stunned too. And you may know what they did. They ran. They just kind of walked to where the explosion was. And what's there? A massive crater. 60 feet. I'll show you a picture of the crater. This is supposed to be the explosion in the background. 60 yards long, 30 feet deep. This is what the crater looked like after. And they piled in some dirt. It's still there. It's about 15 feet deep right now. You can't go in it. They used to let people go in, but now they're worried it would start eroding more. So you can go kind of look in. It's just kind of grass. But there's this big crater, really steep sides when it first happened. Just rough, steep sides. And they kind of went to the edge and did something. It's not the best thing to do, but you might know what they did? They went in. All of them went in.
Why not?
They should have went around. A few did, but they went in. And the thing is, once they got in, they couldn't get out. Now, Ferraro's division was the backup division. And they were sent charging in. And they went charging right to the lip of the crater and did what? Went into. And so now it is literally shoulder to shoulder full of men. Now, Ferraro should have saw this and ordered them around. If they would have went around, they might have been able to break through. But instead, Ferraro is, anybody want to guess? No, but he's with Leadley. He's a member of the temperance movement. Temperance is what? And he's trying to convince Leadley about the evils of drink. This must have been the most comical, horrifically comical conversation ever. Leadley's drunk out of his mind. Ferraro saying, drinking is evil, while their men are dying in the crater. It's like, you got to be kidding. Yes, both would be court-martialed. Well, the Confederates begin to wake up out of the stunning of the explosion. And they went to the lip of the crater. And men are trying to climb out. And you know what they do? They start shooting. And then they roll cannon up. So here's a cannon. This is my mock Civil War cannon. Put the barrel down and then rocked up the end a little bit and begin shooting canister into it. And they couldn't get out. They couldn't get out. The crater is one of these like great opportunities. It was a good plan. And it turned into another disaster. A few thousand Union soldiers were killed or wounded. Another 1,000 Confederates died in the explosion, and another blown opportunity. Burnside would lose his, would be fired too. The crater would be a good chance. And after this, stalemate. For the rest of the siege that went on to April of 1865, anybody want to guess what the Confederates did? Were doing every moment they could. Actually, they talked about it, but they just announced the gunpowder. Listening for tunneling. In World War I, there would be tunnel wars. For example, when I was in Belgium, I was looking at these tunnels that they dug to try underneath the trench lines, and British and Germans fought in the tunnels underneath no man's land. I can't imagine how horrific that would have been. You can go into those tunnels now if you really like bats. You can go in. Yeah, you cannot believe how many bats. I peeked in. Our guy's like, go, go. Ugh. I'm not a fan of bats. Flying rats, not my thing. So, they are, right? So, what happened then? What you got to write down is stalemate. Stalemate. After that, neither side could break through. The great plan was to win a big victory, destroy Lee's army before the election. By the summer of 1864, by August, it's stalemate. Yeah, Lee was pushed all the way back to Petersburg, but his army is still fighting, and it looks like the war might go on. So now it depends on the West. And in the West, this is Sherman. This map I thought looked good. It's not good. So I'm going to skip past this. Sherman has about 80,000 men. The Confederates facing him is Joseph E. Johnston, the same general who originally commanded the armies around Richmond. He's the guy who was wounded and Lee took command. A great defensive general. Sherman had a lot of respect for him. He had slightly over half of what Sherman had. And what was this? Here's Chattanooga. This is where Chickamauga was fought. Chickamauga was right there. Johnston's army is right here. There's one railroad that connects to Atlanta, which is the important city, industrial city, rail hub. And that's Johnston's supply line, that railroad. And what Sherman did, so just as Meade, same time as Meade is starting for the Battle of the Wilderness, Sherman begins in Atlanta. And it's nothing at all like Northern Virginia. While Northern Virginia is a literal bloodbath, this is a totally different style of fighting. There's only really one pitched battle, at least at first. That May, what Sherman does is, he fakes an attack here, and then sends a third of his army around to cut the railroad line. Very clever. But Johnston realizes it and just pulls back. And that would happen 4 different times that summer. And so this is what we have to get. Sherman just outflanked Johnston. Johnston retreated all the way to the gates of Richmond, or I mean of Atlanta. Johnston just retreated. That's all he did. There's one pitched fight at a place called Kennesaw Mountain where Sherman attacked Johnston's line and was defeated, then just outflanked him. So I went over this really fast. But even though Johnston and the Confederates were pushed literally to the gates of Atlanta, Sherman hadn't defeated them. Sherman had not defeated them. It looked like stalemate here too. And that's the point. Stalemate in front of Atlanta, stalemate at Petersburg. Every other Union attempt seemed to fail. It looked like the war will go on. And it's August. The election is coming up. The election of the, oh no, I almost forgot. Atlanta was heavily defended. These are the palisades. These are fortifications with artillery. This is after the Union took it, took a picture of it. And then those chevaux de frise in the background. This picture really shows it. You can really see all the way around Atlanta. It was a mighty fortification. Sherman was not big enough to surround it. And so, stalemate. We have the election coming up. The election of 1864. And I chose this picture because remember the Battle of Antietam. Lincoln went to go visit the Union Army after the battle to encourage their general to move. Does anybody remember that general right here? McClellan. That's McClellan. Irony of ironies. McClellan would be the Democratic nominee for president. McClellan. In the election of 1864, it's McClellan. Everyone got that? He's back. Now, McClellan vowed to stay in the war. He said, I will not let my veterans down. The man I trained. You know, a lot of them were dead by then. But everybody knew, including McClellan, he secretly knew, a vote for Lincoln was a vote to finish the war. A vote for McClellan is a vote to end the war. This is a referendum on the war. McClellan, if he's elected, will have to end it. And if he ends it, the Confederacy will survive, and the United States as we know it is over. Over. The U.S. can't survive if states can just leave. And that's what would have happened. The U.S. would break up into a bunch of little states. No doubt about it. I don't know how many. I don't know what would have happened. We just have a totally different course of history. This is a big deal. August, everybody assumed. This cartoon is a Republican cartoon, and it shows their point of view. They vote for Lincoln, and it's union and liberty. That's a working man. I mentioned this before, that they have a paper hat. That's kind of a symbol of a working man. But what do you notice about the school if Lincoln wins?
Black and white.
Yeah, it's interrated. So it's implying equality. But if you vote for McClellan, a slave option. And who's that? That's Jefferson Davis. And it's not quite like that, but that was the implication. Now, Lincoln is a Republican, or was a Republican. He's a Republican. But what he did is, in this election, his running mate would be a Democrat, and they would call it Union. You vote for the Union, a Republican and Democrat together, a war Democrat and a Republican, to win the war. So they got rid of Hannibal Hamlin, and this one we have to get. His running mate would be Andrew Johnson. He was the governor of Tennessee. Tennessee was a slave state that left, but he remained with the Union. Andrew Johnson, so he's from a slave state, part of the Confederacy. And Johnson, Republican and a Democrat, vote for Union. And so you see sometimes in books that it's called the Union Party, and that is not quite what it was. It was just you voting for Union. It's the Union ticket to vote for a Republican and Democrat unified. Johnson's a Democrat, Lincoln's a Republican. Even though Johnson here does look a lot like an angry toad. Expect him to get a fly any second. Here is a McClellan cartoon. And this is the idea of McClellan bringing Lincoln and Davis together and tearing apart the country, but that's really misleading. Vote for McClellan, war's going to end. So, that August, the stalemate in front of Atlanta and Petersburg. Lincoln is convinced. With most newspaper editors, most people believe Lincoln's going to lose. The people in the North are tired of the war. They just want it over. They just want it over. It's going to go on and on and on and on. And hundreds of thousands have already died. Lincoln would actually write a letter to McClellan to give to McClellan after the election. Lincoln thought, I better write this when my head is clear. He wrote it the third week of August. And it basically said to McClellan, after you are elected, we must both do whatever it takes to win the war. Because when you're inaugurated, we both know you have to quit the war. And he put it in an envelope, put it in his desk, to save, to give to McClellan after McClellan's victory. It looked like the United States is done. That's how close it came, going into September. Who will save the country? Who will save the country? A little bit, but it's somebody else. Who? Grant? No. Who? Who did you say?
Oh, I said John Calhoun.
Calhoun? Will it be Calhoun? He's dead. Calhoun is dead. He can't possibly save it. Calhoun is long gone. No, I will be. Who else? Maybe Raoul. No. Raoul's made up. It can't be Raoul. Who will it be?
What's his sister?
Huh? That's Raoul. Why wouldn't I? Jefferson Davis. Jefferson Davis will save the Union. The President of the Confederacy. Yeah, he didn't do it on purpose. Jefferson Davis hated Johnston. Hated him. Thought he wasn't aggressive enough. So Johnston, who had done a remarkable job preserving his army, Against Lee's advice, Davis fired Johnston. Fired him. And replaced him with one of the hardest fighters in the Confederate Army. Lee said, don't do it. John Bell Hood. Lost an arm and a leg in the fight so far. All he knew was to attack. A hard-fighting Texan. Hood did the only thing he knew what to do. What's that? He attacked, and he attacked, and he attacked. In 4 pitched battles that we lumped together as the Battle of Atlanta, Hood destroyed his army. Trying to destroy Sherman's army, he destroyed his own army. Yeah. Hood.
John C. Hood.
No, John Bell. I know. John Bell Hood. John Bell Hood. Yeah, destroyed his army. Just kept attacking Sherman. A couple times he got him close, but that was it. And after he destroyed his army, the remnants couldn't hold on to Atlanta, and he evacuated Atlanta. Sherman marched into Atlanta early September. Atlanta fell. Atlanta fell to Sherman. If it would have delayed a month, 2 months before Atlanta fell, there might have been a different outcome in that election. So the election of 1804 would turn, put a little star by Atlanta. When Atlanta fell, all of a sudden in the North, they're like, we can win. It's almost over. It went from, it's never going to end, to, we can win this war. And then one more really important city fell at about the same time. Mobile, Alabama. An important harbor city. When Mobile fell, we can win. Admiral David Farragut, remember he's the guy who took New Orleans? His fleet sailed into Mobile Bay, past Confederate gunboats. They had one of those ironclads called the Tennessee. Whereas right here, yeah, the way they make the picture look. Well, what happened is they were dumping, well, first off, it's smoke, but also they tried to dump oil on it instead of fire. And they also had torpedoes under the water. And this is a Union ship that was hit by a torpedo. Okay, here, a torpedo, a modern term for a torpedo is, it's basically, the best way to describe it is almost like an underwater missile propelled by CO2. But torpedoes then were an underwater mine. And they were, the Confederates' hope is when a ship went over, they would let it, they would explode it with an electronic fuse and blow up the ship. And when Farragut's fleet went in, some of his ships started slowing up, worried about torpedoes. And that's when Farragut would say at Mobile Bay, you know what he said? Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. And they just went right over. They did lose a ship, but knocked out the Confederates. I love this picture of Farragut. He had vertigo, and he was worried he might collapse during the battle. He was 64 then, and so he was tied to the lasher. He lashed to the rings here. He was tied. His hands tied and his legs tied. They're fighting a Confederate boat 5 feet away, and he just ran over watching, yelling orders. He did not lack of courage. Go to Washington, D.C., one of the neatest parts of town would be named after him. It's a square, Farragut Square. It's really a cool part of town, named after him. When Mobile fell, Atlanta fell, we can win the war. Who knows if Lincoln would have won or lost if they hadn't have fallen? We don't know, but there's a very good chance McClellan could have won. But with those two cities falling, Lincoln would win an overwhelming victory. Obviously, the states in the Confederacy did not vote, and Lincoln won the election. That means the United States is going to win the war. The Republican Lincoln with a Democratic vice president. But it's just a vice president. What a vice president is. Yeah, break ties in the Senate. Wait for the president to die. So, and huge Republican majorities in both the House and the Senate. Huge Republican majorities. And with that, the war will be prosecuted to the end. This is a picture from Harper's, and I like this one. It's one of the famous cartoons showing Lincoln's victory. Now, very tall, and that's the election results in his hand. Lincoln was not all that popular, but he's going to win the war. And the army voted for him, which kind of surprised him. because they still looked at McClellan fondly, but Lincoln will win the war. And so, what of Hood? Here's Hood. He fled here, and Hood decided to cut off Sherman's supply line. He invaded into Tennessee, but he had almost no troops left. And last battle in the West, December 1864, the Battle of Nashville. Hood tried to take Nashville, failed, then the Union Army destroyed it. George Thomas, the guy who was the Rock of Chickamauga from that video, his command destroyed. I mean, literally destroyed. Hood's army was no more. There's no more Confederate armies in the West. There's still some skirmishes. There's still a little bit of fighting in Texas that would go on even after the Civil War ended, but it's over. Now only Lee's army survived. That's it. It's just Lee's army. Back in Atlanta, Sherman has come up with a plan. And what we have to put down is total war. Total war. Total war. Sherman put down total, or Sherman put down. Oh, I just thought this was a water bottle. You bought this, and so it must have had water in it when you bought it. Oh, yeah. I know. But I just thought it was like a regular empty bottle. Not a lot of calories. No, it just surprised me to see a water bottle with a nutrition thing in it. Good story, huh? All right, so total war. Total war is a term that actually was developed in World War I, but they've been doing it. The blockade, the Anaconda Plan was total war. But total war was this. Sherman proposed, excuse me, Sherman proposed to take the war to the civilians. And that's what total war is. Everybody, every man, woman, and child of the enemy is a combatant. That is total war. You take the war to them. You make them suffer. You burn down their homes. You starve them. Perhaps even some will die. The blockade was already doing it. But that's what Sherman proposed. Total war. But there's a logic to it. It's not because he was a psychopath. Okay, some of the people might have been psychopaths, but not Sherman. This is the goal of total war. You take the war to the civilians. You make civilians suffer. This is what you have to write down. You have to get this down. They go hand in hand. It's more than just taking the war to the civilians. You do it so the civilians want to quit the war. So they get their government to quit the war. They quit the war. You break their will to resist. That's why they do it. You make them suffer. And that's the logic. So you attack civilians. You make them suffer. You even kill them. You terrify them. So they quit fighting. That's total war. That is the way all wars are fought. What is it called where you kill so many of the enemy they have to quit fighting? What was that called? I told you that yesterday. Attrition. Attrition. This is attrition on a grand scale. Attrition. This is attrition on the grand scale. On a grand scale. And this is the way all wars are fought. Total war is without a doubt the most horrific thing ever invented by mankind. Period. Because this justifies doing horrific things to everybody. Total war would be the justification to use gas on civilians, to use firebombs and kill hundreds of thousands of civilians, to use atomic bombs. Even after the war was essentially over, the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs, justified by total war. Genocide, justified by total war. And the Germans did the final solution because of total war. That was their justification. We have to win the war. It's the most horrible thing ever invented. I know, now I'm blaming Sherman for it. No, Sherman was doing stuff that already did it, but that's what he proposed. I don't like total war. We will talk about it more later. This is the way we fight. 1991, when the United States and 38 other countries drove Iraq out of Kuwait. Its first targets were electrical facilities, water facilities, and sewage treatment plants in Iraq. Make civilians suffer. They've never repaired them. 2003, they finished the job. They still don't have the electricity, water, or sewage they had in 1991 to this day in Iraq. Civilians suffer, and tens of thousands will die in the process. So, what's Sherman's plan? This is what he'll do. Obviously, he didn't have the technology to bomb them, and so he will take 60,000 men, spread out, so anywhere from up to 80 to 100 miles wide, to spread them out and march through Georgia, destroying everything of value in their path. March from Atlanta to Georgia. This will be called the March to the Sea. I'll get to the bombers in just a second. The March to the Sea. He proposed it. He would live off the land, abandon the supply line. And part of the tactic, well, first off, when they left Atlanta, they were originally just going to burn down supplies and stores. The fire spread like they always do. Atlanta was burned down. Then they marched south. Bummers were like deserters and camp followers who followed the Union Army, and they did even more damage. They went to homes and destroyed them. They took from everybody. The Army took from everybody too. They basically just destroyed the South wherever they marched, in that path. Everything of value, every town, every government building, every railroad destroyed. As they went, homes that were burned down, nothing would be standing but the chimneys. And they became known as Sherman's, no one guess? Good guess. Tombstones. Sherman's tombstones were the chimneys. For the railroad, they came up with an ingenious way to destroy track. What they did is, they called them Sherman's neckties. They took the rails and put them over the ties, lit the ties on fire so it melted the middle, and then they wrapped them around a telephone pole. Or a telegraph line. This is pre-telephone, sorry. They wrapped them around, and now they can't be used anymore. Sherman's neckties. Don't go to southern Georgia today with your William Tecumseh Sherman statue and put it in your front yard. They still, to this day, hate Sherman. I'm not kidding. Every building they would rebuild during Reconstruction and afterward, every government building, the front door faces very defiantly south. We're not going to face the Yankees. When my brother was a professor at Georgia Southern University for a while, I went down and visited him. He made it very clear, be careful if you say where you're from, because they don't like Yankees down here. And he had a couple windows broken. He's a Yankee. They don't like it. Then they made it to Savannah. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking. Wait a minute. I want to see a cartoon version of this, right? Who was thinking that? Raise your hand. Yeah, can't help it, right? There's Chester the Crab. I showed him with the Whiskey Rebellion. He's back with the cartoon version of destruction of the South. He makes it fun. There's Chester right there. He arrived in Savannah, took it and sent a fast ship up to Washington, D.C., basically for President Lincoln. I present you Savannah as a Christmas present. The March to the Sea worked. Destruction. And then, it's Christmas. This was at Harper's in 1864, Christmas. And I love this picture because it's like training the next generation of soldiers. I just found that, wow. That's like kind of interesting. But, right here, then Sherman turned north and cut a swath across South Carolina. That was double the destruction of Georgia. When they went to South Carolina, they leveled where they went. Why did they destroy South Carolina with such glee? Yeah, that's the birth of secession. And there was a small Confederate army, but then he advanced. The destruction basically ended in North Carolina. And he's moving up to link up with Meade's army around Petersburg. It's nearly over. One more thing I'll tell you very quickly. The Shenandoah Valley had been a problem for the Union Army for a very long time. A small Confederate raiding force even invaded and kind of did a raid near Washington, D.C., attacked one of the forts. There was a small battle right outside of Washington, D.C. It was just a raid. Lincoln went to go look at the battle. He walked around the train. He thought it was really fun. He got a bullet right through his top hat. He's going to go down, right through. Some guy said, "You get your ass down, you damn fool," and tried to be President Lincoln. I thought that was kind of funny. But what Grant did is he had enough, and he sent Phil Sheridan. Remember, Sheridan's the one who climbed up Missionary Ridge and jumped on the cannon. He was head of the cavalry. He sent Sheridan and gave him orders, destroy the Shenandoah Valley. And that's what he did. Sheridan destroyed the Shenandoah Valley. He brought total war to there. There wasn't a stalk of grain standing. The story was not even a crow was seen flying after Sheridan destroyed it. He defeated one small Confederate army at Winchester, and that was it. In fact, there's the horse. You can go visit his horse, Winchester. Where at? The Smithsonian Museum of American History in Washington, D.C. He likes sugar and carrots. So bring some. Just put it under his mouth. Yeah? Yeah, the horse is 156. Stuff it, yeah. Stuff it with carrots and sugar. He loves it. Yeah, the horse is stuffed at the Smithsonian. Sheridan had it stuffed. Yeah. And the horse is huge. It's huge. I think it's funny. He was short, so I'll get the tallest horse around. So, one more thing. There were so many people killed in all those battles from the wilderness to Petersburg, that the army, in fact, it was the adjutant general, General named Meigs, but he had to find a place to, he had to find a cemetery. The cemeteries were full. His son, General Meigs, you don't have to write his name down, I'm just talking. His son was killed at Petersburg. He blamed Lee. Meigs was responsible for finding a cemetery, and that's what he did. He took Arlington. Arlington is just across the river. It was Lee's plantation home. Meigs took it, commandeered it for the United States Army, and turned General Lee's plantation into Arlington National Cemetery. The most hollow ground in the United States was the home of Robert E. Lee. He never went back. Saw once from a train. This is when they first started burying Civil War dead in here. This is what it looks like, this was like 7 years ago. That is Lee's home. Still there. You go tour Lee's plantation home, and his the slave quarters are behind. Yeah, Lee didn't live there after the war, but they left the mansion there. Yeah. Arlington. Arlington National Cemetery, just across the Potomac from Washington, D.C. So if you're there, you can look right down the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Memorial, and the mall, and the Capitol. You can see, if you stand right by Lee's home, you look right down it. In fact, just off, it's behind the trees, just over here, that's where John F. Kennedy's there. It's just right across the river, directly across from, ironically, the Lincoln Memorial, which was completed in 1913. It's an amazing place. If you ever get a chance, go there. Has anyone been there? Really, go there. And after World War I, they copied the French and did something called the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, a soldier who died and just could not identify the body. They have one from World War II, Korea, and Vietnam there too. And if you get a chance, go there. Every hour they change the guards. And it is just remarkable. It's really an amazing thing. I really think you should go, get a chance. I know, but, and it's almost full. It's just about full. Next 5 or 6 years.
So they still bury people?
Yeah, when I was there, the last time I was there, there was a man who was a Marine general, and he was being buried. He passed away. He fought World War II in Korea. And I was there, and I'm just kind of looking at one of the hills. That's where they have a monument for the USS Maine. We'll talk about that later on. I could see the procession go by. So, he's just there. And I was there for a couple changing of the guards. One time for a grand review of the regiment that guards the entire thing. It was really, wow. Wow. Well, the Confederacy didn't last long, and the Confederacy will finally collapse. In those 3 months, it was over. Men were deserting every night. They were starving to death. They were literally out of food. They were taking corn cobs from dumps, grinding them up and making sort of a bread out of it. And that's all they had. Virtually no protein, and that just kind of stuck in their stomach. And to give it a little bit of filling, they put sawdust in it. Sawdust makes you feel like you're full, but I don't need to, you probably can guess, it doesn't feel good coming out. Just the men were miserable. So deserting every night, starving to death. Lee was actually made commander of all Confederate forces in the last 2 months, but by then it's too late. And President Davis was desperate. He even suggested freeing all the slaves if Britain would recognize it. That's the whole reason you fight. I mean, it's over. And then finally, that night, the Union Army looked like they were going to cut off the last supply line. The Confederate line broke. And that night, the 2nd and 3rd, was a panicky retreat. All Lee could do is run away from the Petersburg lines. He took off running eastward. And when that happened, literally the next day, the Union forces entered the Petersburg lines. This is a young Confederate soldier who was killed in that last little bit of fighting. Young man, probably I would say 16 or 17. And you can see very skinny. They're called, Union soldiers called them walking scarecrows because they were so skinny from having no food. And at the same time, then once Petersburg fell, it happened just like that. They had to just run away from Richmond. And Richmond fell that night too. And when they were leaving, they didn't have time to get all their materials or supplies. So they tried to burn a couple warehouses and the documents for the Confederacy. And when they fled, the fire spread and the Confederates accidentally burned down all of Richmond. That night of the 3rd, Lincoln, who was nearby, knowing the war is about over, could not resist it. And he rode into Richmond with just a small cavalry escort. And he was greeted by thousands of jubilant, singing former slaves. Lincoln would write in his diary that this was his greatest moment of his life. He only had 6 more days. Well, this red is Lee just running away as quickly as possible. Meade's army's behind him. There'd be a couple fights, and then right here, Lee would be cut off. Because cavalry under George Armstrong Custer had a place called Appomattox Courthouse. And at Appomattox Courthouse on April 9th, someone gets this point. The bell governor, and I know, Appomattox Courthouse on April 9th, Lee sent word he's willing to surrender. At Appomattox Courthouse. He actually surrendered in a guy by the name of Wilmer McLean's, I put it up right here, Wilmer McLean's parlor is where Lee surrendered. This is a popular picture of it, even though Meade was not there. And the only reason I mentioned Wilmer McLean, last story for today, Wilmer McLean actually was originally living in Manassas. Remember that's where the first battle was? When the Battle of Manassas first began, the very first battle, a cannon went through his back porch and into a cannon shell, into his back porch into the kitchen. And McLean realized this might be a dangerous place to live. Let's move someplace quiet. He moved to Appomattox Courthouse. So he could say, the war began in my back porch and ended in my front parlor. Have a good weekend. I'll see you tomorrow. When I saw it, it was a copy of, I've not checked to see the actual diary, but they have a museum of Ford's Theater where he was assassinated, and they had a copy of it. And it was just a bunch of things, one of them was mentioning about Richmond. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he said. And it's, yeah, they actually read them. You're getting
But I can't believe I'm getting stopped.
It's, you know, I mean, it's really cool. And you kind of like this stuff. I think you would like it.
You're slacking so hard on the best of it.
Well, what time is it again? Okay.
I'm getting stopped. My number was in the paper. I'm getting stopped.
Appomattox Courthouse.
What?
They asked me to go
And a long day.
When I found out wasn't an actual courthouse, it was the actual name of the town. Like I was so confused.
It's the same guy who's, it's the guy who.
Sorry about that.
Where they started. Yeah, and Mr. Sullivan was like, yeah, they were at a house at Appomattox Courthouse. I'm like, yeah, Appomattox Courthouse is the name of the town.
This is weird. Do you
Sorry.
have match?
What name was
Yeah, I have courthouse.
Okay, well,
See ya.
Such a slacker, seriously.
Take care. Hey, some of us work for a living. How you like that? Get back, we're all gonna, you get out in the hallway. Punks.
bad back.
Oh, bad back. I once broke my back in 6 places.
I went
you
to
not?
physical therapy. I have a bad back.
Pretty bad. Much worse than breaking back. Emily.
Nope. So, what's your questions?
Okay, so you have to be 16 or 18 to get a passport without parental consent.
You don't have to be
18.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't know. I was over 18 when I got mine. I really
Do you know
don't
how long it takes for a passport to
Yeah,
get
well,
issued?
2 months.
with
You
With
can get it,
expedite
you can get it
services.
expedited. I think it comes out, my father.
So wait, you're a freshman,
right? We had to pay like an additional $60. So you go to the,
his
I'm still recording.
little badge that says